I want to get going immediately with our Summit 2012 keynote speaker. To introduce our first speaker of the summit, we're calling on a great friend of Colorado Christian University and Centennial Institute, someone who participated in Summit 2011 and was so impressed with the spirit that he found, not just up at the front of the room, but amongst lots of you in the room, that he wanted to be closer to what we do and be a bigger part of the summit this year, and we're very grateful that he can be. I want you to welcome now the respected pastor, television host, humanitarian, author, Christian statesman of the past 35 years. He has not missed a battle, and he can tell you that this is the stiffest we have ever faced. You will hear from him and his co-author of the wonderful book Indivisible tomorrow. But before we hear in the morning from Jay Richards and James Robison about their book, I want to ask James to come up here because he has made it possible for us to bring Glenn Beck from Texas Today on a detour in Glenn's very, very busy schedule to help us kick off the summit. Now please welcome our friend, Dr. James Robison.
It is a privilege and honor to be in Colorado, a state that presently is on fire. And I'm praying for God to give everyone the strength to stand together. Our nation is on fire. Freedom is on trial. And our only hope is for those who understand the importance of faith, family, and freedom, including a free market, to come together to literally restore our nation's foundation. I am the father of 3, the grandfather of 11. Next winter, I will be married to Betty for 50 years. The very fact that I'm standing here is a miracle of God's grace and the conviction of someone who refused to compromise. A 40-year-old home nurse was raped by the alcoholic son of the elderly man she was caring for, and she conceived. Finding herself pregnant at age 40 the first time in her life, she went to have an abortion. A doctor refused. Basically, he looked at her womb and said possibilities and refused to do it. She reflected and prayed, and at age 41 gave birth to me. Thank God I had a chance. I believe that my life and the fact that we've been able to lead over 20 million people to Christ and save millions of people's lives around the world is a tribute to the convictions that must be restored in order for our nation's stability and security and future to be restored. It is high time for every person who professes faith in God to first fall on their face before God and then stand on their feet for God. We can no longer bow to the gods of this world or we're going to lose our freedom. I pay tribute to every one of you because you care. To the wonderful work of Senator Armstrong, Colorado Christian University, Centennial Institute. I have been privileged to know closely some of the great people, and I know what that term great means. Ronald Reagan was a great man. Billy Graham is a great man. I consider it an honor to have been their friends. The man I'm about to introduce is a great man. He's not only a gifted man, he's not only the most gifted person in media, but I have found him to be the most humble, the most yielded to the purpose and will of God of any person I've ever met. His dynamic communication skill, his commitment to correct our nation's perilous course, his fearlessness and his boldness. He reminds me sometimes of my own bold statements. I've been often wrong, but I've never been in doubt. It's obvious he's never in doubt. My prayer is that he'll continue to grow to be the great statesman leader that I know he's been called for this time to be. I believe he's one of the greatest sources of inspiration in America today. Would you welcome my friend and a man I admire and appreciate from the bottom of my heart? Would you welcome Glenn Beck?
Oh, hello. Well, I know things are already on fire here in Colorado, but the conservatives are about to set the political scene on fire. It is high time that we start to recognize who we are. We're Americans. That's who we are. We are Americans. We are not a group of victims. I'm tired of feeling like the victim. Oh, he's victimizing us. Oh, my goodness. I'm tired of having people tell us that we can't do it anymore. Yes, we can. He should read his own bumper stickers. I want to talk to you a little bit tonight about cowards and heroes, because really that's the choice that we all have to make. Are we going to cower? Are we going to sit down? Or are we going to be Americans and stand up and finish the job? I think there are three kinds of cowards. There's the kind of coward that hides when the going gets tough. That coward is the one, I don't know if you remember the movie not Schindler's List, but Saving Private Ryan. Saving Private Ryan. In Saving Private Ryan, it's amazing. The scene where the guy is going up the stairs and he just starts shaking and he can't go around the corner because he's afraid that the Germans there are going to kill him. There's one kind of coward. You hide in fear. The other is the kind of coward that I think many of our neighbors have become. And this is not a Democratic disease. This is a Republican and Democrat. This is a pure American disease. The one that says, I stopped looking at it. I don't want to look at it. It's too depressing. It's too this. It's too that. And they hide from the truth. I got news for you. As a recovering alcoholic, the truth will always find you. No matter where you try to hide, it will always find you. And then there's the third kind of coward. And that's the kind of coward that will not meet you on the battlefield of ideas. The kind of coward that hides their agenda. We won the American Revolution. We won the American Revolution because George Washington recognized the brilliance of the Indians. They were hiding in trees. The British didn't understand that. The British thought that was wrong. They put on their red outfits and marched out in the middle of the field like, where is everybody? The British called the Indians and the Americans cowards. No, it's just that the Indians were not stupid. The British, they were stupid. They didn't realize that the war had changed. The way war was fought had changed. One of our biggest problems in America now is our politicians don't understand that the war has changed. Politics has changed. It's not the same. It changed 100 years ago because the cowards knew we cannot win with the American people. Because if they know the foundation of America, if they know our Constitution, if they know George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine, we cannot win. So let's change names from the progressives to the liberals and take the libertarian chair away from the table and put progressives in both parties. And then change our history, change our heritage. To quote Michelle Obama, Barack knows that we're going to have to change our history and our conversation and our traditions. Well, I didn't know that. Anybody else know that? She said it so matter-of-factly before the last election. Barack knows that we're going to... Wow, how did he know that? Because that's what the progressives have been doing to us for about 100 years. And we've been fighting an old war, like the British, walking right into it every single time. The progressives have been hiding in the trees. The progressives have been hiding their agenda. The progressives hide any place they can. This week, I wonder if some of the progressives haven't been hiding in black robes. John Roberts is a coward. If you believe that, make the case. Announce it to the American people. Don't slink into an Oval Office and convince everybody that you believe in the Constitution and then come out and say, well, sure, you can tax them anything you want. What do you think is going to stop Bloomberg when he says, he's already done it with the trans fats. Then he goes to the 16-ounce sodas. Now, I'm not kidding you, now in New York, he's on the tubs of popcorn at the movie theaters. When are New Yorkers going to say, shut the hell up? He can't make the case. They have to take it one little bit at a time. When you can say, what's going to stop Bloomberg now from saying, you know what, it's good for all of New York if you exercise twice a week. You got to join a gym. Otherwise, you're going to have to pay a tax. What's to stop him? John Roberts just announced that's totally cool. Nothing. Everything changes. Everything has changed. I really, truly believe. First of all, when you're looking at this, I had a guy call me who does this for a living. He looks at these kinds of things for a living. He called me about 5 minutes before I went on the air, and he said, Glenn, I've had my best team looking at this all day. There is no good news in this. There's just no good news. There's just no way to spin this court decision in a good way. I read on my own website, The Blaze, today, there's 5 things that should make you feel good about the court decision. No. Here is the only one thing that makes a difference. We are wide awake, and for generations to come, historians will know that we knew exactly what we were going to get in the end. In 2008, we had no idea. Hope and change, it sounded pretty good to a lot of people. Hey, let's have some hope. Let's have some change. I don't even know what that is. But we sure got change. A lot of people are working just for change now. That's not what we were looking for. We wanted an end to corruption. And I believe the Democrats wanted that as well. Somehow or another, the Democrats have fallen asleep. Our good American neighbors who just vote differently than us, somehow or another have fallen asleep. Where now they're just accepting anything. I don't understand it. We cannot be those people. The one thing that came out of the court decision is they're fired up. People know this is it. This is Abraham Lincoln time, guys. The next president is going to be as pivotal as Abraham Lincoln. Understand it clearly, because that's the way historians will write it. We either saved the Union or we destroyed the Union. Which will it be? Because the next president will chart a new course. The next 4 years, and I've heard people say this all my life, this election is the most important. And I've always said the same thing. No, it's not. It's pretty important, but it's not the most important. We can recover. We will not recover from this president for another 4 years. We must win. We must activate ourselves. But first, we have to know what we stand for. What do we really stand for? You can't really commit until you really know what it is. I contend that Barack Obama made me a better man. Barack Obama has made me a better citizen. Barack Obama has made me a stronger American. 4 years ago, my daughter said to me, she said she was going to go to college and she wanted to take history, major in history. And I said, oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I said, I'm so thrilled. We need good American history professors. She looked at me and she said, "Oh, no, Dad. American history, it's too dark, too ugly, too bloody." I said, "You got to be kidding me. What are you going to study?" And she said, "Greeks and Rome." I said, "Did you miss the whole feeding people to lions part?" I looked at her. We were standing in the foyer of our house. And I looked at her and I said, "If you can't survive the propaganda from school in this home, no one can." She said, "Dad, you just don't know." I said, "I'm going to prove you wrong." As it turns out, we proved each other wrong. America is a pretty dark place. America's had some really, really dark times. Horrible. What we've done to the Native Americans in the past, what we did to African Americans in the past, the Irish, the Chinese. You know what? It's not an American thing, it's a people thing. It's a people thing. Every country, every group of people rounds up another group of people at some point or another. But what makes us unique? What makes us unique is in this box. It was given to me today. My office right before I left Texas. I got a package in, and it contained what's in this box and some other things. It's what makes us uniquely American. It's why we will win. It's who we are. It's a woman she was born in 1913, and she just passed away. The family sent it to me. Said, "We knew you would know what to do with it, and you'd preserve it." We have to decide what's worth not dying for, but living for. We have to decide what kind of people do we want to be. We have to decide if God even plays a role. I get a lot of heat for talking about God now. But I got news for you. That's the secret. I don't care what religion you are. I don't care what religion you are. That's what got us here. America is great because America is good. How did de Tocqueville find that conclusion? De Tocqueville went across the country. He said, "I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it in the halls of justice. I couldn't find its greatness in its businesses. I couldn't find it, its storefronts or its ports. I couldn't find it in its universities. I found the secret of America in its churches. America is great because America is good." We have an administration and a culture that is telling us to close our hearts, telling us the way to be an American, the way to be charitable, is on April 15th. I got news for you. I have never written a check to the IRS and went, "Man, I feel so good." Never. Show you this. It's a little book from 1920. Called Socialism for Millionaires by George Bernard Shaw. George Bernard Shaw, one of the most evil guys you've ever. He's the guy who said, "You must know somebody whose life isn't worth living. Let's just line them up and say, 'Explain yourself.' Because your life is clearly no use to you, and it's no use to us." He was an evil man. I read that on the plane today. I love it. It talks about how millionaires aren't charitable. He says millionaires aren't charitable. You know what they do? Just so they can sell equipment to each other, they'll start these fancy hospitals. They'll start these fancy hospitals where they do research so they can get richer, but they'll never open up a hospital for the common folk. Wow. Tell that to my friend John Huntsman Sr., who's going to die broke and give all of the billions that he has made his whole life to charity, starting hospitals, going and providing care on the Indian reservations. I know a lot of billionaires that are wildly charitable. They're trying to close our hearts. Right now, they're trying to restrict the food. In 11 cities, they now have laws on the books where if you want to go give food to a homeless shelter, you better check with them first. Because they need to check the salt content, the fat content. I got news for you. If you ever see me and I'm out on the street and I'm hungry, give me a donut. I don't care. I don't care what you got. Give it to me. I'll worry about the whole weight loss thing or heart problems later. I'm hungry. Got a pack of M&Ms, I'll take it. Why would they do that? Do you remember what Barack Obama, what the first thing he tried to do? Take away America's charitable deduction. That was the first thing he tried to do. I remember getting that on my desk and seeing that and thought, why the hell would you do that? Because America is great, because she is good. If you can stop us from being good to each other, think of that. Why is the hatred coursing through our veins of our society? Why are we whipping people up into hatred? We've got the Nazis and the Panthers in Florida. And most of us say, let the system work. Gotta pump the hatred in. I mean, I hate to quote Star Wars, but yes, feel the power of the dark side. That's what it is. Stop us from being good. And stop us from looking to a higher power other than Washington. It's named Washington for a reason, after George Washington. And I don't care what all of the progressive professors have done to our books and our history. I don't care what they try to tell you now. I've read his original papers. I've read in his own handwriting the words that he said about God. I know that he asked America to humble itself and to beg God, please, dear Lord, help us. We'll never beat the British. Think of what they accomplished. They were farmers. I tell you what, table 11, I want you guys, come on over here. We're going to plan for a minute, and I want you guys to take on SEAL Team 6. Table 10, you take on SEAL Team 3. I tell you what, the whole room, you guys take on half of SEAL Team 6. Are you going to do it? Do you think you're going to win? No. Farmers were taking on the SEAL teams. Farmers who had nothing, they had no shoes. How did it happen? Through the protection of divine providence. The fog of Long Island comes rolling in. Washington has already lost. He's already lost. He starts way up, Boston all the way down. He's now on Long Island. They're pushing him off on Long Island, and they've got him trapped because you have the East River. Before you hit Manhattan, you have Long Island, the East River, then Manhattan. His troops are coming this way. They got to get to Manhattan. But right here in the East River are the British warships. He's backing right into them, and he knows. British are pushing this way. They got him. It's over. He says, keep moving, boys. God will protect us. Both the British and the Americans both write about a divine, providential, God kind of fog, a fog that has never been seen before, a fog that comes right at the port where Washington's men are coming in, right there. At the same time, this fog stays right there as a wind barrels down the East River and pushes the British fleet back. All the men get across the water, all of them. Washington is the last one on Manhattan. As he steps on, he's like, run. The fog lifts. They all write in their journals that's the only place the fog appeared. And you can find those stories over and over and over again. And if you want to listen to the historians who weren't there, rather than the people who were there and wrote it in their own handwriting, God bless you. But it was divine providence because we had a goal, we had a mission. We still have a mission. Is there anyone here that believes that our greatest days are behind us? They are not. If they are, then we are done. But you tell me, who will stand? You tell me when there's an injustice. You tell me when there is a hurricane, when there's an earthquake. Who will do more than the Americans? And I don't mean Washington, D.C. I mean you and you and you and you. Who will do it? No one will. That is America's rightful place, and we must stand and claim it again. Now, how are we going to do it? We are going to do it when we put aside our petty differences. Libertarians, you've got to link arms with the conservatives. And conservatives, you need to link arms with the libertarians. The left is standing with the Muslim Brotherhood. The left is standing with people who will either shoot you in the back or the Brotherhood will step in and chop their heads off. They'll stand with anybody. And we can't stand together? Let me tell you about an atheist libertarian and George Washington. This is an original copy of Common Sense. Books didn't come like they do now. You bought them pamphlets. This is the original Common Sense. This Common Sense is what got us to the Declaration of Independence. This is the pamphlet that swept America, that said, this doesn't make any sense. You know that you were created to be a free man. And look what they want to control. They want to tell you how to do everything. That's between you and God. You work it out. Common sense. That's what got us to the Declaration of Independence. Then he had to write another one called The Crisis. Just a few months later, because the boys were at the Delaware waiting to get on the boat. And nobody wanted to get on the boat. And George Washington, he's like, guys, we got to go get the Navy SEALs. We got to go get the Hessians. It's like, we haven't won a single war. We haven't won a single battle, not one. We had 20,000 men just a few months ago. We're down to 2,000. And you want to take on the Hessians? What are you, crazy? He's like, no, listen, let's just go borrow some boats and go the other way. Nobody was going to do it. Thomas Paine is listening to the drum. He's in another place. He's listening to the drum beat as he's marching. He said, give me the head of that drum. Anybody have a pen? He writes the American crisis on the head of a drum. Rolls it up, gives it to a writer, says, get it to Philadelphia, print it, find Washington, give it to him. It arrives December 24th as Washington is trying to convince his men, now is the time. Gets this and reads it, and he reads it to the men. Now is the time. They got in the boat, and it was the turning point. Now let me take you after the Revolution. This is the original letter that Thomas Paine wrote to George Washington after the Revolution. Thomas Paine and Thomas Jefferson said, we should go help the French. And Washington said, you're mad. That's going to spiral out of control. Look, someday they'll say the French Revolution, they'll see any revolution they'll say like Egypt. It's going to be like the French Revolution. They'll know. They can see it coming. That's not the American Revolution. Don't be involved in that. Thomas Paine said, you're wrong. I'm going. Washington said, if you go, I'm not going to help you if you get into trouble. Well, he didn't. They were literally beheading children at the guillotine before Thomas Paine said, okay, guys, whoa, this didn't happen in America. Then they turned on him and said, you betray the French Revolution. They threw him in the Bastille. At Mount Vernon, at the stairs, Washington has the key to the Bastille. They throw him in the Bastille. They're going to execute him. He writes to Washington over and over again. Washington won't save him. He gets out through divine providence. The only reason why he wasn't killed is because he had a cold. And so he went to the doctor. He convinced him, can I go see a doctor? It's the day before they're going to execute him. They're going to chop his head off. I mean, it's a head cold. We'll solve that one tomorrow. They leave his door open, which is usually the sign the prisoner had died. So they don't put the death notice on the door. That's the only thing that saved him. When he gets out, he writes this letter. This letter says, to Washington, I never thought you would be the one that would betray us. You let me rot. They never spoke ever again. The reason why I bring up this story is because they're both patriots. Both of them. We would not be sitting in this room today speaking English if it wasn't for Thomas Paine. We would not be sitting in this room speaking English with this freedom if it were not for George Washington. It took both of them together. They were wildly different, but each patriots. It is time that we stand together. It is time for the conservatives and the libertarians, for the Baptists and the Mormons to put our differences aside and stand together for man's freedom. Commit. It's hard. It's hard to commit. Do not read this book in a contemporary version. This is from 1901. This is a first edition copy of Up from Slavery by Booker T. Washington. If you go into the store now and buy this book, it comes with an introduction from a professor who would like to tell you, we don't even know if any of this story is true. We don't even think now that Booker T. Washington was even really a slave. Really? Because he was pretty clear. There's a reason they need to erase Booker T. Washington. In the first few pages, you read just the first 20 pages, you will not put this book down until you finished. In the first 20 pages, Booker T talks about watching his mother. He's small. And they're in this hut. And she's kneeling by her bedside. And he's listening to her pray for this person called Abraham Lincoln. He said he doesn't even know who he is. But she is weeping and begging the Lord, protect him, Lord. Please protect him. He said, my next real memory from that time is seeing a man in a blue uniform coming up. And he said to the slaves, you are free. He said, I looked at my mother and I didn't even know what that really meant. But everybody was excited and celebrating. My mother was crying and hugging us and saying, it's here, we've won, we're free. He writes that the slaves celebrated for a while until the afternoon wore on and it became night. And at night, things got very quiet, and the discussion changed to, what does that mean? What do we do? That's why your friends won't look. That's why people hold back. That's why people won't look at true freedom, because it's frightening. The East screwed this nation up. I'm from Washington State, so I could say these things. The East screwed this nation up over the last 100 years. It will be the West that sets it free, because the West gets it. The West has a different mentality. We are pull yourself up by the bootstraps. My grandfather would kick every single person's ass in this country right now. He was a farmer. He was a farmer that said, pull yourself up. He had a 4th grade education. He was the shop steward, yes, a union member at Boeing. He couldn't read the blueprints. My uncle became my uncle because he became my grandfather's friend, because he would cover for him, because he was a very good machinist. When they had a tough part, he'd bring him upstairs. And my uncle would always say, now, Ed, in a room full of men, Ed, now see what this is over here. And he would basically read everything on the blueprint until my father understood and didn't need to read anymore. And my grandfather would say, Dave, I can read. You'd never know. I'm the first Beck in my line to have attended college. I took 1 class. But I paid for it myself. And I took it, and I used that 1 class to create who I am today. I learned I'm smart enough. I can learn it myself. I can seek brilliant people out. I can stay up late at night and I can read books myself. And I'm not going to read what somebody else tells me the truth is. I'm going to read it firsthand. Don't tell me what Booker T was. I'm going to let Booker T tell me who he was. That's who we are. That's who we are as Americans. Never saw this coming, did you? Anybody know what it is? It's a shoe. Not something Nike is interested in. I looked at this morning and I thought, my gosh, that just doesn't seem comfortable at all. They were worn by a woman who was born in Palo Alto, California. She was born in 1918. She moved in the 1930s to Oakland. And she worked in Oakland. She was an artist. She was of Japanese descent. When the war broke out in 1940, she wanted to help. And so she went to work for the WPA, doing art projects to help win the war for America. I don't know if she was wearing those shoes at the time, but when she went to work for the WPA, she was working in San Francisco, California. believe in divine providence because this I had already purchased myself. This is an original poster, civilian order number 41. Basically, it says 8 o'clock on morning, Tuesday. If you're Japanese, come on down here at the Presidio. Need to get on a bus? You can take one suitcase with you. You're coming with us. For your protection, of course. Now, I need more table space. She was taken from the Presidio that day. And she was taken to Wyoming. She went to Wyoming to Heart Mountain. It's a concentration camp. We call it an internment camp, but I'm sorry, I don't even know what an internment camp is. We shouldn't even call it a camp. We took American citizens and we put them in camps for their protection. Who did that, by the way? Progressives. Wasn't the first time we did it. The last time we did it before FDR, Wilson did it. Another progressive. He did it with the Irish and the Germans. We did it with the Italians, the Germans. This, she was an artist. This is the front of the camp. This is her. Now I want to tell you the real story here. Because she was an artist, she asked for paper and to be able to start an art class with the children. She had the children draw this picture of a Japanese girl, hand in hand with an American. Your back is up against the wall. Your country has taken you off the streets while you were working to win the war and put you into an internment camp in very uncomfortable shoes, I might add. And you're not bitter, angry. You show it can be a better world. This woman was an American. This woman had guts. We have a president now who has everything at his disposal. We have a president now who wants for nothing. Most powerful man in the world. And yet he's dividing. She was in an internment camp. One last piece. Last Christmas, I get very weird presents from my family. Last Christmas, my wife gave me this. Besides my children, if my house burned down, this would be the only thing I would take. This is from a man who is Swedish, and he was in Budapest during the Second World War, and he saw what was happening to the Jews in Hungary. And he said, that's degrading to make you wear the star. And then he watched some more, and he saw what was happening. And he brought people into his office, and he said, you're now a Swede. And he would type out a letter of protection. It said, this woman, this man, is no longer Hungarian. They are Swedish, and they are protected by the Swedish crown. He said, these are my Jews. This is one of the last letters he wrote for a woman who eventually came to America, started her own business, went on to great things in America. It says she's a Swede. She doesn't have to show you her papers other than this. She begged him, please come with me. The Russians are coming. He said, there are more Jews here to save. And maybe the Russians will be different. We don't even know where he's buried. He was killed shortly after this letter was written by the Russians. They weren't different. The world is not different. America is. And we're different because we're good. The good news that I have to share with you this week is we are always best at the last minute. We are always best when we're down on the ground. We're always at our best when the whole world is coming undone and going insane. We're always our best when there's no chance for us to win. I got news for you. There's no chance for us to win. That's why we will. Stand up and be Americans. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.